Okay, welcome to another edition of these NCAA game previews for the NCAA tournament. A little bit late on this one. This game is just this afternoon, Utah versus Duke, but wanted to get something in there before the game for fans looking for a taste of what is to come. An interesting kind of clash or lack thereof of styles. I wrote in my notes as I was watching Utah that sloppy game, an up and down game would favor the Utes. They really ran on Jacksonville in their conference final game, and they have two polls, DePonio and Boylston, who are in the top 11 in the country in college turnovers. Well, Duke likes to run too, and if you make their life a little bit easier in transition, Duke is probably the most athletic team in the country, if not on a pretty short list. So you're in a bit of a rock and hard space if you're the Utes, depending on how fast you want to get up and down in this game, given that you might be playing right into Duke's hands. I still think that sloppiness favors Utah in terms of unforced errors by the Duke offense. If they can limit those, I think they'll have success. Utah really does rely on causing turnovers, getting out over the top, and getting up in transition. Statistically, these are two of the best teams in the country from efficiency point of view. Cumulative efficiency, Utah is number 2, Duke is number 4. Now, obviously, there are strength of schedule components that tie into that, so it's not a perfect metric. And then offensive efficiency, Duke is 2, Utah is 3. Defensive efficiency, Utah is 4, and Duke is just a little bit lower than that. And again, obviously there's strength of schedule stuff that plays into that, but clearly Utah is pretty good on both ends. They do a good job. I was just looking through all those efficiency stats are courtesy of Lacrosse Reference. Was looking through some of their stuff this morning. Utah is one of the most efficient teams in the country on short possessions and on long possessions. They seem to do a good job of, if they're not going to get it right away, they play very good early offense, and then if they don't score right away, they kind of sit on the ball a little bit and get later in clocks. These are two teams that are pretty well coached, obviously, and should be a really fun game. Something to watch. When doing this Duke analysis, obviously Duke should be a heavy favorite in this game. They are a heavy favorite. They have athletic advantages, at most places on the field. A big thing for them throughout this playoff run is going to be the specialist matrix, which is another term courtesy of Lacrosse Reference, which basically adds the face-off percentage and the goaltending percentage. Naso obviously was last year's first-team All-American. I think we have more top-end face-off guys than we ever have, so you see a little bit more volatility. And a good example of that is in 22, Luke Weirman was the first-teamer. In 23, Jake Naso, and then in 24, USA Lacrosse Magazine, I think, was the first All-American list, and they had Wheatfeld from Michigan, and Weirman's still in college. Naso's still in college. Stathakis has been in that mix for a long time. I think Wambach at UNC actually finished close to the top of the percentage. So there's more good face-off guys, I think, than there used to be, especially in that elite tier. But if Naso can get going, he's going to be really big. And then Jameson's been really solid for them all year. Obviously, for Duke, kind of a weird weekend last weekend. They get a big win, which they needed against Cuse. They ran that team out of the building. It was 5-0 in the first 5 minutes, and that was a really important one. And then they basically had the reverse happen to them against Notre Dame. I'm not sure people realize how dominant Notre Dame is against a very athletic Duke team, who's obviously the 2 seed. They really put their foot down all over the field. It was an impressive game from Notre Dame, but kind of a weird weekend to come away from Duke, because obviously you get something that you really needed, and then you turn around with the loss. One of the kind of interesting subplots of this whole NCAA tournament is, of the top 8 seeds, 6 of them are coming off of losses in their last game. Duke lost, Syracuse lost, Hopkins lost, Denver lost, Maryland lost. The only teams that actually won Virginia lost. The only teams that won their last game was Notre Dame and was Georgetown. And Georgetown's the 8 seed. Maybe could have even been the 9 seed with a pick'em game against Penn State, who also lost their last game. And then on the flip side, you have all these unseeded teams who are really hot. Utah's coming off of an emotional victory over Jacksonville. Princeton fighting for their lives, stayed alive. Michigan, obviously, hottest team in the country. And then you have all these conference tournament winners. So kind of an interesting dynamic. Obviously, you always have conference tournament winners in the unseeded portion, but it's rare to have 6 of the top 8 seeds coming directly off of a loss. So jumping into the keys to the game here, starting with Duke, a great adjustment, I thought, to put McAdory at the attack. He was awesome against Syracuse. He was just really taking his men from behind the net, and I think with having him in there, it gives them basically 2, high efficiency, effective players behind the goal with Zawada and McAdory. Dyson's going to play obviously mostly above the goal anyways, so the midfield thing is not a huge deal. He's obviously played midfield as well for Team Canada and at other points in his career with Duke. So I thought the most important thing with McAdory is it just gave him the ball more. He was just obviously he's just on the field more, and it also just led to way more behind the goal play for Duke, which I think is something that they've been a little bit susceptible to all season. So I love that matchup, and he's super quick and a good feeder, all that stuff. The thing that really hurts you with him is the straight line speed, and they like to get him in the back corner and really let him run. And then obviously you have some pretty gifted shooters with the potential to have Williams and O'Neal and some of their middies who can really hose it. I also think there's some overlapping skill sets on that first midfield when McAdory was playing midfield. With Johnson and Sloat, they have guys who can beat their men and initiate the offense. So I think it's effective to have Dyson in there playing midfield, if hopefully free him up against some short sticks. And then, you have McAdory really putting pressure on you behind the cage. Again, the Notre Dame game wasn't as effective, but Notre Dame can really cover the ball with a great variety of players. And again, Notre Dame is just really good. So I'm not sure how much you can draw from that game. So just the keys for Duke, no uncaused errors. Again, Boylston and DePonio especially, but they have other guys, Utah does, that can really play, and they want to cause turnovers. So you got to limit the easy ones, really force this team to cover your guys because, again, Duke's going to have athletic advantages at most, if not every position. And then you got to be solid on pick play. Utah likes to set a lot of down picks to the with the idea of getting their guys to the middle. And there's some possessions like one I'll throw in right now, which shows Utah setting a pick, coming off it, moving the ball, and then setting a pick again, kind of like a weave with picks, and it's been pretty effective for them. And then on the note of the pick play, you got to be on high alert early. This Utah offense is very good at attacking early in the possession, like I said, and they do a good job of setting picks for guys to get over top and then leaving lots of room underneath. So if you could win those matchups, if you're Utah, they do a nice job of allowing space underneath for Dodgers to really get there. Duke's going to have to do that, going to have to be aware of that. And then the most important thing for Duke is just enforce your will. You're the better team. You're looking to go on a playoff run and kind of avenge last year's loss. Duke fans are going to look for this one to be a dominant game. Utah's a good team, well coached, some good players. But if you're looking just for the keys to the game for Duke, you got to enforce your will. You got to be the team that you're capable of being, and it starts obviously this week. And then for Utah, again, they're in a bit of a rock and a hard place here with the way that they can play. I think the most obvious thing they could do is just try to limit O'Neal's touches. Obviously, Duke's got a lot of players that can beat you. I think you can hopefully live with other guys doing it. You don't want to let 34 just ruin your game. And you can bet that the winner of Maryland-Princeton, who's going to see this team in the next round, is also hoping that 34 doesn't get going here. He's one of the most talented players in the world, and he's got the ability to really go crazy. And Utah's going to try to hope that doesn't start and happen against them. You got to find a way to force turnovers. That's kind of been the key for Utah all year. And then try to keep the ball above the goal as much as you can defensively. Again, it's not a perfect fix, but I think when McAdory and Zawada get going behind the goal, like I've been talking about, it's going to be tough. So I would think that they would try to press out on X as much as they can, especially if it's ever O'Neal back there. Really try to press out and then just try to limit the touches for Zawada and McAdory behind the goal. And then they got to compete in the specialist matrix, like I said. They can't get smoked at the face-off X and in the cage. Obviously going to be battle against a very good team, but they got to do what they can. Utah's good. Ryan Steins, their leading scorer, he was terrific in the conference tournament, had a bunch of goals against Jacksonville. He can really sling it. If you're Duke, you got to find him early in possessions on fast breaks, and he's been in good form recently. Again, there's some strength of schedule stuff, but 5 goals in the conference tournament finals, 4 points, 4 points, 4 points, 5 points, 6 points in his last number of games. So he's hot. He's their best player, and really what sets up a lot of his stuff is the ability to shoot on the run, and sweep shots. That's a lot of the picks they set for him are sweep shots, and then Tyler Bradbury's their kind of jitterbug behind the goal. It'll be interesting to see what Duke does with Brouwer. I would think lefty on a big sweeping righty would be a good matchup for Steins. And then Bradbury's going to have to try to get after whoever's next, because if your offense is going at Brouwer a whole lot, obviously you could have a long day. He's one of the best in the country for a reason. So it's never easy to pull these matchups. If I was Utah, I'd try something weird, short stick somebody crazy or try to shut somebody. Why not? I think you saw when Georgetown beat Delaware a couple of years ago, or when Delaware beat Georgetown, they went with a short stick shut and kind of threw off the rhythm. I think you have a better chance of trying to throw off the rhythm than of just guarding this Duke team straight up, because obviously some pretty talented players, and especially with McAdory behind there, he puts a lot of pressure on you. Then lastly, just some X factors in this one. I think it's McAdory. I think he's the X factor for the whole tournament for them. If he can really be dominant, then Duke's in a great spot. And then for Utah, I got Colby Plott. He's a long stick player. He's listed as a defender. I think he's in there as LSM as well. 16 points this year. That's a lot. It's got to be among the highest among defensive personnel. Scored in the Jacksonville game. Looked pretty comfortable doing it. Had assists in the 2 previous games. He's had a 3-point game, a 4-point game this year. Again, I understand the strength of schedule stuff, but when you have long sticks like that who are comfortable getting over the midline, making plays, it's obviously a huge help. And when you're going to try to pull an upset, you're probably not going to score 10 to 12 goals at 6-on-6 against a stout Duke defense and a Duke goalie. You got to try to find easy goals somewhere, and Plotts will be big for that for Utah. Should be a fun one. 2:30 face-off today at Duke. Should be a great game, and looking forward to it. Thanks for listening.